Welcome to the Teachanywhere Introduction to Attestation and Legalization of Documents. I'm Diane Jacuto, the General Manager of Teachanywhere. We're specialists in international teacher recruitment. Now I'd like to start with a bit of a disclaimer. This presentation is meant to introduce you to the concepts of legalization, but always measure twice and cut once. And this is because the rules and regulations change constantly. So I ask that you do check with the embassy first before starting on the legalization process. Also check with your school to verify what documents that they need legalized, because it can vary between schools even within the same country. Now let's start with what is attestation. The terms attestation, legalization, and apostille all refer to the process of proving to a foreign country that your documents are genuine. Now, it's needed for documents that are required for your work visa in many countries. So proof that you have a degree and proof that you're a trained teacher are two examples. They also affect documents that would enable you to sponsor a spouse or dependent. So things like a marriage certificate, a divorce certificate, custody, birth, or adoption documents. Oftentimes people ask, why do we need to do this? And I tell them to imagine that you're a visa officer in a foreign country. Now, how can you be expected to understand what an official document looks like for over 200 different countries and many hundreds of different documents that you might need to know? It's pretty much impossible. So the answer is to get the issuing country to authorize it and authenticate it for you. And this is what attestation does. Now there's 3 steps to attestation. The first is to make a notarized copy of the documents. The reason you do this is because oftentimes you need to leave these documents with your school when you arrive in the foreign country, and most teachers do prefer to keep their originals. Some documents are not allowed to be copied in certain countries. This would apply to marriage and birth certificates in the UK, for instance. Now, if this is the case, you might want to order an official duplicate, or some teachers just authenticate the original. The next step is to get the issuing country to authenticate the copy. And the third step is to get your new host country embassy to stamp it. Now for the first step, making a copy, you would need to make a notarized copy of the document. We recommend that you use the phone book and shop around for notaries because prices can vary quite significantly. We've seen copies from $5 or £5 all the way up to $100 or £100 per document. In some countries, notaries are cheap and plentiful. In other countries, it might have to be a special solicitor, so do check around. You will end up with a stamped photocopy of your document. For licensed teachers, if you're in this very specific UAE program, you will need to attest only your highest degree as well as a teaching credential. They cannot be the same document, plus if there's any spouse or dependent documents as needed. For international schools, your school will let you know what documents you need to attest. If your documents are not in English, for instance, some Irish degree certificates are listed in Latin, or if you happen to have your degree in French or Spanish, you will probably need to get an official translation as well. The next step is to get the issuing country to validate your document. Now, in this case, it will depend on the issuing country what process you follow. And I've listed for you some of the more common issuing country offices where you'll need to go. So in the UK, for instance, the Foreign and Commonwealth Office in Milton Keynes. In Ireland, the Department for Foreign Affairs. In Australia, you've got Foreign Affairs offices in Canada, in Sydney, and scattered across the country. In New Zealand, it's the Department of Internal Affairs in Auckland. In Canada, it's the Department of Foreign Affairs in Ottawa. In South Africa, you need to make 2 stops. Both of them are in Pretoria. One is in the Plaatje building, and then you need to carry on to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. In the U.S., 2 steps are also needed, and this is because your state will issue your teaching certificate, and then you have to go to the Department of State in Washington. Now, most of the time, teachers will do this by post, so you don't actually have to go there. It's obviously faster if you do go in person. If your documents were issued by a different country than the ones listed, do check with the embassy of your new host country first, because in some cases you might be able to go to, let's say, the Kenyan embassy in your home country. In other cases, you might actually have to send them off to Kenya if your document was issued by Kenya. So do double check first with your new host embassy before you take the next step. Now, you may have to send only your notarized copy, but you may also have to send your original and your notarized copy, so check before you send. The final step is to get these new documents that have now been doubly stamped, checked and stamped by your new host embassy. So you'll need to present these documents in the country where you're going. So if you're going to the UAE, you go to the UAE embassy. If you're going to Kuwait, you go to the Kuwaiti embassy. Double check the address and the hours of operation if you're going in person, and if you're posting them in, double check all the mailing addresses and the document return requirements, because sometimes you have to put in a self-addressed stamped envelope. Double check what you need to send. When it's complete, we ask that you scan the copy both front and back to your new school if you're going to an international school, or to Teachanywhere if you're in the licensed teacher program. Take your original documents as well as your attested copies with you when you go abroad. And that's it. So to recap, attestation, authentication, and apostille are how you prove to a foreign country that your documents are genuine. It is required for many foreign countries for visa and sponsorship purposes, and it does vary by country and it does vary by school. The biggest thing to remember is to measure twice and cut once. Always, always double check before you spend your time and money. Attestation has 3 steps, which are notarize the copy when it's possible, authenticate it by the issuing country, and get it stamped by the embassy of the receiving country. These steps can take a week, they can take months, depending on where you live, how many steps, and what documents you need. So we recommend that you start as soon as possible after signing your teaching contract. If you found your job through Teachanywhere, you can ask your consultant for a copy of our immigration and legalization guidelines. This gives you an awful lot more information, including postal addresses and links to websites. I wish you the best of luck and enjoy your new adventure abroad.